politicians and celebrities were hit in this breach. The story got traction, the bot was shut down, and later a few individuals were also dating. And now there are reports of a bigger breach. They're becoming more frequent. As more Indians go online, their data is at risk. In fact, as we speak, another controversy is brewing. This one features Apple's iPhones. Many people, including opposition lawmakers in India, have received messages. They came from Apple, and the message says this: someone is trying to hack your iPhone. It comes from Apple's threat notification system. It was introduced in 2021, the system. It was to protect users. If Apple suspects your phone has been breached, it sends you a message like this. The warning is rather vague. It says, we don't know for sure if your phone was hacked or not. In fact, just look at the first line. Apple believes you're being targeted by state-sponsored attackers. Now look at the last line. While it's possible this is a false alarm, please take this warning seriously. So it's serious, but not clear. Who is behind these hacking attempts? Were these phones compromised or not? We don't know. But it has triggered a heated political debate in India, and Apple had to weigh in there. It said the messages are not linked to quote-unquote any specific state-sponsored hacker. Meaning, they don't know who's behind this. But India's opposition leaders are blaming the government. They say the government is trying to hack their phones. And what does the government say? They've launched an investigation. They've asked Apple to join the field. But politics aside, data security is a serious issue, especially in India because we do not have a data security law. There is no legislative framework to deal with large-scale breaches. A bill was passed in August this year, but it is yet to be notified. So Indians are using the internet without any protections. It's sort of like driving a car without airbags. If there's a crash, you're on the road. Here's another risk that India is bracing for: supply disruptions in the oil market. Because West Asia is at war and the war could spill over. It could draw in regional players. These are all oil-producing countries. Almost the entire planet depends on West Asia for oil. In fact, 4 of the top 10 oil exporting nations in the world are in West Asia, 4 of the top 10. So if this war spreads, oil prices will soar. In fact, they're already higher compared to this time last year. And Israel has just begun the ground offensive. There's no telling how long this will last. So India is trying to secure supplies. And this time, India is looking at Venezuela, the South American nation. It is home to some of the world's largest oil reserves. But in recent years, it has also seen political turmoil. The West is not friends with the Venezuelan president. They accuse him of hurting democracy. They say his election was not free and fair. So America imposed sanctions on Venezuela. That was in 2019. Until then, India used to buy oil from Venezuela. 5 to 7% of crude imports to India came from Venezuela until 2019. But the American sanctions stopped all of that. India was forced to halt the business. And India has major business interests in Venezuela, especially India's public sector companies. They have stakes in Venezuelan oil fields. They're also owed money from their investments. And this is money that they've not been able to collect, all because of American sanctions. But this month, those sanctions were lifted. So Venezuela can sell oil in the global market again. And India is keen to buy again, that too at heavily discounted prices. It's an opportunity for India in 2 ways. 1, you diversify the oil risk, and 2, you save costs. In fact, India has been playing it smart in the oil market for a while now. Just look at the numbers. This is the latest government data. India has imported more crude this September than last year. So more crude in September this year than last year, about 4.8 million barrels more. Also, prices are higher compared to last year. Yet, India spent less on imports. Let me repeat that. Oil costs more now. India has also bought more, but India's import bill is lower. In September last year, it was $11.8 billion. In the same month this year, it's $10.9 billion. How did India do this? Thanks to Russia. It has become India's biggest oil supplier. Imports from Russia have increased since February last year, since the war in Ukraine began. India has been buying more Russian oil. Earlier, the top suppliers were Iraq and Saudi Arabia. Now it's Russia. India pivoted to Russia to maximize savings. It also lowered the risk of dependence on West Asia. And now West Asia looks like a risky bet. So India is looking to tap Venezuela. This will insulate Indian consumers from the chaos in West Asia. It will also look at Russia's latest demands, address those demands. We'll be telling you about them. When the oil trade first boomed last year, Russia was accepting payments in Indian rupees. But now it has a lot of rupees and nowhere to spend them. So Russia has a new demand. It wants oil payments in the yuan, the Chinese currency. India, of course, does not want that. Two reasons for that: politics and economics. Relations with China are not good. It tried to invade India in 2020 and maintains an aggressive posture. That's the politics. And from the business perspective, the oil will become more expensive. Converting rupees to the Chinese yuan will add to the cost. And this will reduce the savings from Russian oil. Hence the turn to Venezuela. It gives India options with its oil imports, allowing it to navigate the complex global oil market. Now let's turn our attention to Kenya. Like King Charles III of Britain has, the monarch is on a 4-day state visit to Kenya. It's his first visit to a former colony after his ascension to the throne. The trip could be a bit uncomfortable for him because of the dark history of British rule in Kenya. We'll get to that in a moment, but first let's tell you what happened today. Charles arrived in Kenya's capital, Nairobi, last night. Today he was given a ceremonial welcome by Kenyan President William Ruto. A red carpet was laid out. There was a 21-gun salute. All the signs of a colonial hangover seemed to be there. But then came the reminder of the legacy of British colonialism. Charles made a read at the tomb of the unknown warrior. It is a memorial to honor those who lost their lives in the quest for freedom. Freedom from the British Empire. The memorial stands at the place where Kenya declared independence. So Charles laying a wreath there has great symbolic value. But is that where he will stop? At mere symbolism? Charles respectfully, Buckingham Palace says he will try, and I'm quoting, try to deepen his understanding of how Britain mistreated Kenya. He will also address the quote-unquote painful aspects of the UK-Kenya relationship during this time. That's how Buckingham Palace worded it. Painful aspects. Quite the understatement. Brutal, bloody, or barbaric seem more accurate. Painful is a very mild description of British colonialism. Kenya gained independence from the British in 1963. It came after years of struggle. The worst period was between 1952 and 1960. It is known as the Mau Mau Rebellion or the Kenyan Emergency. The rebellion years saw about 19,000 Kenyans executed, tortured, or maimed. It's according to the Kenyan Human Rights Commission. Britain, of course, refused that number, despite being shown evidence.
The Indian Human Rights Commission has responded to that need by providing a detailed description of all the atrocities, of all the injustices to do with land, and many other things. Now that he has that from us, we would like him now to come back and saying, well, I've got much more deeper understanding than I expected. We were demanding an apology of the Kenyan people.
Surprisingly, the UK has acknowledged some of the torture and murder. In 2013, the UK paid about $24 million to some 5,000 survivors. Not out of the goodness of their hearts, of course. The Kenyans sued the UK and won that case. But it was a step towards reconciliation. Charles is expected to make more amends during this visit.
In fact, we don't request. In fact, we have to demand a public apology from the government of British because of the atrocities they meted on our people. The first one is the apology. After the apologies, we also expect a reparation.
So how far will Charles go to heal the wounds of the past? He's seen as more open to admitting fault than his predecessors. But will he come out and apologize? Will he endorse reparations? Or will this trip just be a PR exercise for the new king? The next few days will tell. What do militaries typically make news for? Their arsenal, their preparedness, their budgets, their deployments. How about their food orders? Like where they source their rations from, where they buy their fish. The US military is in the headlines for this. They're bulk buying fish from Japan, not because Tokyo is offering some big discount, it's more of a political statement to show solidarity. Until recently, the biggest buyer of fish from Japan was China. But now China is boycotting Japanese seafood, and the US is trying to mitigate the economic damage on its support.
In 2011, Japan's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear plant was crippled by a tsunami. The plant had 1.34 million tons of nuclear wastewater. For over a decade, the wastewater simply sat there with nowhere to go. But in August this year, Japan finally went ahead with its controversial plan. It began releasing the treated radioactive wastewater into the Pacific. China didn't like this one bit. It has been a fierce critic of Japan's discharge plan. So, immediately after the release, it imposed a blanket ban on Japanese seafood. And this is still wreaking havoc on Japan's fishing industry. You see, the Japanese seafood market is worth about $56 billion. Before the ban, China was the biggest importer of Japanese.
Watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. Day 25 of the war, and Israel has gone missing from the map. All thanks to China. We'll explain what happened here. Meanwhile, Hamas has released a new hostage video. More tanks are rolling into Gaza, more sirens are going off in Israel. Netanyahu has rejected calls for a ceasefire, and Europe is divided on who or what it should support. This war has put the